It was the dawn of July 7th, 1944, a date that would etch itself into the memory of every man aboard the destroyer escort USS Callahan, though not for reasons anyone could have predicted. The air over the Philippine Sea, southwest of Saipan, was already thick with the oppressive humidity of the Pacific theater, the rising sun promising another scorching day. Below decks, in the cramped, sweltering galley, Petty Officer Third Class Mac McMillan, a quiet, observant Iowan who'd traded cornfields for the endless ocean, was wrestling with a batch of stubborn flour for the morning's biscuits. Mac, at 24, was an unlikely figure to shape naval history. He joined the Navy hoping to see the world, but his skills, honed on a family farm where he'd learned to fix everything from tractors to leaky roofs, had instead landed him in the mess hall, his hands more familiar with dough than detonators. Yet his mind, often lost in thought during monotonous watches, was constantly turning, dissecting, and analyzing. Just the night before, Mac had been sharing one of these thoughts, an idea that had been gestating for weeks in the mess hall during a rare moment of downtime. Lieutenant Commander Richard "Rich" Hayes, the ship's executive officer, was present, along with Chief Petty Officer Thomas "Tommy" O'Malley, the gruff but respected chief engineer. Mac, emboldened by a rare off-duty camaraderie, had outlined his theory about smoke screens. Not the conventional kind, the kind destroyers were trained to lay down to obscure themselves, but something different. "Chief," Mac had started, wiping his hands on a greasy rag, "you know how thick that black smoke gets when the main engine burns a little too much oil on startup, and how it just hangs there, low to the water?" Chief O'Malley grunted, more focused on his coffee. Mac continued, his voice earnest. "What if we could make that kind of smoke, but on purpose? Not just for us, but to blind them? A real thick, low, acrid cloud that sticks around, not just a quick puff." Hayes had scoffed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "McMillan, with all due respect, you're a cook. We deploy smoke screens to protect our ships. Our smoke generators are designed for concealment, not some kind of grand atmospheric experiment." Chief O'Malley chimed in, "A cook's got a tactical idea. What, are you going to blind him with burned biscuits, Mac?" A few other sailors at nearby tables chuckled, and Mac felt a familiar flush creep up his neck. He tried to explain his observations from back home, how a wet straw fire with a little oil would create a dense, choking fog that could obscure an entire field for hours. He spoke of atomizing fuel oil with seawater vapor at a lower temperature, creating a heavier, less buoyant smoke. He was dismissed, politely but firmly. "Stick to your pots and pans, son," Hayes had advised. "We'll handle the fighting." Mac had retreated, his idea ridiculed, shelved as another impractical notion from the ship's resident eccentric. They had no idea that this quiet cook, dismissed as a dreamer, held the key to a miracle that would rewrite their fate. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. This wasn't just about smoke. It was about an audacious, dismissed idea that would ultimately save hundreds of lives. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when the Callahan's radar operator shouted, his voice cracking with alarm, "Contact! Bearings 060, range 15 miles, large surface force." On the bridge, Commander Elias Vance, captain of the Callahan, felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. Vance was a traditionalist, a veteran of countless patrols, and a man who prided himself on precision and adherence to naval doctrine. He knew what large surface force meant in these waters. "All hands to battle stations," he barked, his voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. The Callahan and her sister ship, the USS Kemp's 2 destroyer escorts, were the sole protectors of a vital convoy. 5 slow Liberty ships laden with fuel, ammunition, and medical supplies for the ongoing invasion of Saipan. They were the only thing standing between those vulnerable transports and whatever Japanese steel was now bearing down on them. A quick check of the intelligence reports from last night painted a grim picture. A Japanese raiding force, including a heavy cruiser and 2 destroyers, had been sighted in the area. It was almost certainly them. 2 destroyer escorts against a heavy cruiser. The odds were suicidal. As the ship thrummed to life, the clatter of feet on steel decks, the blare of the general quarters alarm, Mac McMillan found himself in the chaos of the mess hall, now a battle dressing station. He was no longer thinking about biscuits. The memory of his dismissed idea resurfaced with an urgent clarity. He knew with a certainty that defied his rank and station that his stupid trick might be their only chance. He sought out Chief O'Malley amidst the frantic preparations. "Chief, my idea about the smoke. What if we could—" O'Malley cut him off, his face grim. "Not now, Mac. We've got bigger problems than your kitchen experiments," Mac persisted, grabbing the chief's arm. "But this is the problem. They'll tear us apart. If we could blind them completely, not just screen ourselves. A heavy smoke, thick enough to fool their spotters, their radar even. Think about it, Chief, the physics of it. The way different aerosols scatter radar waves." He spoke of his farm experience again, of understanding combustion, and how incomplete combustion mixed with moisture could create a dense, persistent fog. The ship's standard smoke generators atomized bunker C fuel oil into the hot exhaust gases, creating a white, buoyant smoke designed to dissipate after a short time. Mac's concept involved feeding seawater into the generator's exhaust stream, or perhaps even directly into the fuel atomizer, to create a heavier, wetter, and cooler smoke that would cling to the water's surface and spread. He envisioned a screen that would confound not just visual sighting, but also the nascent radar systems of the time, which could be confused by dense atmospheric clutter. O'Malley, despite his initial dismissal, was a mechanic at heart. He understood the principles Mac was describing, even if he doubted their practical application in the middle of a naval battle. He could see Mac's point about lowering the exhaust temperature, slowing the fuel atomization rate, and introducing water to create a different kind of aerosol. Meanwhile, on the bridge, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Japanese force, identified by their distinct radar signature as the heavy cruiser Chikuma, and her escorts, destroyers Yukikaze and Isukaze, was closing. Commander Vance, his face etched with grim determination, stared at the radar screen. "Bearing 50, range 10 miles and closing fast. Prepare for engagement." He knew their 5-inch guns were no match for the Chikuma's 8-inch cannons. Their only hope was to draw fire, lay a conventional smokescreen, and pray the convoy could scatter. It was a faint hope. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, his face pale, approached Vance. "Sir, Macmillan, the cook, he has an unconventional proposal regarding smoke generation." Vance turned, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. "A cook's harebrained scheme? Is that where we are, Hayes? Desperate enough to listen to the mess steward?" Vance paced the bridge, his gaze sweeping the horizon, then returning to the radar. He was a man out of options. "Tell me exactly what he's proposing, Lieutenant Commander." Hayes relayed Mac's theory, the detailed, almost obsessive explanation of fuel mixtures, temperature and atmospheric dispersion. Vance listened, his expression unreadable, but a seed of desperate possibility, however outlandish, had been planted. With the heavy cruiser, Chikuma's lead guns now within effective range, the first salvos ripped through the dawn air, sending geysers of water skyward perilously close to the lead Liberty ship. Commander Vance slammed his fist on the chart table. "All right, Hayes, get Macmillan up here. If he can do anything, he better do it now." He looked at his executive officer, a grim acknowledgement of their impossible situation. "This is it. Last chance. If his magic smoke doesn't work, we're all fish food." Mac, covered in flour and engine grease from his quick but passionate argument with Chief O'Malley, sprinted to the bridge. Captain Vance gave him a curt nod. "Macmillan, you've got 5 minutes. Make it happen. Chief O'Malley, give him whatever he needs." O'Malley, despite his lingering skepticism, was a sailor first. An order was an order. "Aye, Captain," he grunted, already turning for the engine room. The next few minutes were a blur of frantic action. Mac, surprisingly calm, led O'Malley and a handful of engine room crew to the ship's stern, where the smoke generators were housed. These were standard naval units, essentially large boilers, that superheated fuel oil and injected it into the exhaust stream. Mac's modifications were hasty, but precise. He directed the crew to partially restrict the exhaust vents, creating back pressure and reducing the exit temperature. More crucially, he ordered a raw seawater intake valve, normally used for cooling, to be jury-rigged to spray a fine mist directly into the atomized fuel stream before it hit the superheated exhaust. "We want cold, wet combustion, Chief," Mac explained, his voice urgent. Not hot vapor. It needs to sink to cling. O'Malley, grumbling about farm boy alchemy, oversaw the modifications with surprising speed, recognizing the desperate ingenuity in Mac's approach. Up on deck, sailors at their battle stations watched the activity at the stern with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "What's that cook up to now?" one asked, peering over a gun shield. Another replied, "Probably trying to bake us out of trouble." The mood was tense, punctuated by the whistle and crash of distant shellfire. The Chikuma's heavy guns were finding their range, bracketing the Callahan and Kemp with increasing accuracy. Then Mac, his face streaked with grease and sweat, gave a thumbs up. "Ready, Captain," he yelled into the comms. Vance hesitated for only a second. "Execute! All generators full output." From the stern of the USS Callahan, a plume began to emerge. But it wasn't the familiar, wispy, white smoke of conventional concealment. This was different. A dense, sickeningly yellow-grey cloud billowed forth, thick and opaque, clinging unnaturally low to the water's surface. It spread rapidly, propelled by a light breeze, not rising to dissipate into the sky but rolling outwards like a malevolent fog. An acrid, oily smell began to permeate the air. Within moments, the Callahan herself was swallowed by the churning pall. On the bridge of the Japanese heavy cruiser, Chikuma, Vice Admiral Tetsuo Sato watched, a frown deepening on his brow. He was an experienced commander, hardened by years of naval warfare. He had seen American smokescreens before. "But this, what is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "They deploy smoke, but it is not like the others. It is heavier, too low." Captain Kenji Tanaka, observing through his binoculars, noted the strange density. "Admiral, it appears to be clinging to the water's surface. It obscures their destroyers almost instantly, and it is spreading at an unusual rate." The American ships, which had been clear targets moments before, had vanished into an unnatural, sickly-colored haze. Confusion began to ripple through the Japanese bridge. Mac's stupid trick was working. The unique low-lying and heavy smoke laden with atomized fuel oil and seawater vapor did not rise and scatter like conventional naval smoke. Instead, it hugged the waves, creating an impenetrable wall of yellow-gray haze that refused to disperse. Carried by the gentle breeze, it spread like a creeping miasma, not just concealing the American convoy and its escorts, but extending outward, directly towards the advancing Japanese fleet. The air became thick, choking, and sight vanished completely within its shroud. On the bridge of the Chikuma, chaos erupted. Gunners reported zero visibility. Spotters, peering through binoculars, could see nothing but the swirling, acrid grayness. Vice Admiral Sato, normally composed, was now pacing furiously. "Where are they? How can this be so thick? It is unnatural." Navigators struggled, their charts showing open sea, but their eyes reporting an endless blinding fog. The ship's powerful main guns, designed to engage targets at immense distances, were now utterly useless. They might as well be firing blindfolded. The radar, typically their savior in low visibility, was also struggling. While revolutionary for its time, early 1944 naval radar, particularly Japanese systems, was not adept at discerning discrete targets within a large, dense, and irregularly shaped atmospheric phenomenon. Instead of clear pips representing the American ships, the Chikuma's radar screen began to display a vast, amorphous cloud of clutter, a swirling mass of interference that masked any true targets. It appeared as if the American formation had suddenly ballooned in size, or that some bizarre weather system had materialized out of nowhere. "Admiral," the radar operator stammered, "the American vessels, they are lost within a massive, undefined echo. We cannot distinguish individual targets." This was the first major plot twist. Mac's smoke wasn't just obscuring their sight, it was actively confusing their advanced technology. Through the impenetrable screen, shells from the Chikuma and her destroyers whistled past, their trajectories based on the last known positions of the American ships. Water columns erupted, but they were now exploding harmlessly in empty ocean, far from their intended targets. The convoy, under the desperate direction of Commander Vance, had already begun frantic evasive maneuvers, scattering in different directions under the cover of Mac's brilliant blinding fog. The smell of the smoke was everywhere, a metallic, oily, choking scent that stung the eyes and burned the throat, a constant, visceral reminder of their predicament. On the Japanese destroyers Yukikaze and Isokaze, officers barked orders, their voices tinged with a rising panic. The ships were navigating by guesswork, fearing collision with their own vessels, let alone the unseen enemy. The radio chatter on the American frequency was a torrent of urgent, clipped commands for course changes, a testament to the desperate ballet unfolding within the safety of the man-made fog. Every splash, every muffled thud of a distant shell underscored the surreal, terrifying effectiveness of the smoke. The battle reached its turning point, not with a thunderous broadside, but with a series of daring, almost suicidal maneuvers orchestrated by Commander Vance. Protected by the dense, unnatural fog, the USS Callahan and USS Kemp became phantom ships. While the Japanese struggled to interpret their radar, the American ships, generating the smoke themselves, possessed a distinct, if not perfect, advantage. Their radar, though still challenged by the sheer density, could at least track their own convoy and use the gaps or edges of their self-made shroud to their benefit. Vance, seeing the mounting Japanese confusion on his own radar scope, seized the initiative. "Execute Plan Alpha," he roared. "Torpedoes away on bearing 110. Guns are targets of opportunity." The two destroyer escorts, almost completely hidden, wove through their own swirling smoke, their engines groaning as they accelerated and turned sharply. Suddenly, the Callahan emerged for a brief, terrifying moment from the edge of the yellow-gray cloud, launched a spread of torpedoes, and fired a rapid volley from her 5-inch guns, then vanished back into the obscurity before the Japanese could react. A similar synchronized attack came from the Kemp. It was a guerrilla tactic, born of desperation, but executed with startling effectiveness. On the Chikuma's bridge, Vice Admiral Sato was in a rage. "Where are they? They appear and disappear like ghosts. This is impossible." He could barely see the bow of his own ship. His fleet, designed for coordinated long-range engagements, was now a group of blind giants stumbling in the dark. Sato, bewildered and frustrated, ordered his ships to change course, to form a defensive circle, but without visual confirmation or reliable radar. His commands only added to the disarray. The destroyers Yukikaze and Isokaze almost collided, their fog-shrouded bows narrowly missing each other in the chaos. Their formation broke, each ship isolated and vulnerable. Sato's face, normally stern, was now a mask of incredulity and fury. "They are mocking us. This is not conventional smoke. This is witchcraft." Crucially, the convoy of Liberty ships, though buffeted by near misses, escaped significant damage. Max smoke had provided the cover they needed to disperse and escape the Japanese trap. Then came a shuddering impact. A single torpedo, one of those launched by the Callahan, slammed into the Chikuma's stern. It wasn't a crippling blow, but it caused significant damage, rattling the heavy cruiser and sending a column of water and steam high into the air. This was the stroke of luck, or perhaps divine intervention, that sealed the Japanese fate. The Chikuma, already blind and disoriented, was now also wounded. The heavy cruiser immediately began to lose speed and started to list slightly. This unexpected hit, amidst the confusing, blinding smoke, was enough. On the Callahan's bridge, the initial skepticism from the crew had evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of awe. Sailors peered out at the swirling, acrid cloud that still obscured everything, a low hum of whispers carrying through the comms. Macmillan's magic. The cook's fog. Captain Vance, grim-faced but with a visible relaxation of his shoulders, allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible nod of approval in Mac's direction. Mac, still covered in soot and sweat, returned a quiet nod, his eyes scanning the radar for signs of the retreating enemy. He had done it. The Japanese fleet, their formation shattered, their targets vanished, and their lead cruiser damaged, finally disengaged. Vice Admiral Sato, convinced he had encountered an American task force far larger and more technologically advanced than his intelligence suggested, ordered a full retreat. The sun was now high in the sky, but the yellow fog, as some of the American sailors would later call it, continued to cling to the water, slowly dissipating over the next hour. By the time it finally cleared, revealing an empty, placid sea. The Japanese warships were long gone, a ghost of a threat receding into the distant horizon. Exhausted sailors emerged from their battle stations, blinking in the returning sunlight, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. They looked at Mac Macmillan no longer with amusement or ridicule, but with a profound, almost reverent respect. Chief O'Malley, usually stoic, clapped Mac on the back, a rare show of raw emotion. "Mac, you son of a gun. You actually did it. I'll never doubt a farmer's logic again." Lieutenant Commander Hayes, humbled and visibly shaken by the near disaster they had averted, approached Mac. "Macmillan," he said, his voice quiet, "I owe you an apology, and perhaps my life, and the lives of every man on this ship." Mac, ever the quiet one, just nodded, a small, tired smile playing on his lips. "Just glad it worked, sir." The transformation from mockery to profound respect was palpable. "Remember when we laughed?" a seaman asked another, shaking his head in disbelief. "Never again, buddy. Never again." Hundreds of lives aboard the 5 Liberty ships, carrying their precious cargo of fuel and ammunition crucial for the Saipan invasion, had been spared. The crews of the Callahan and Kemp, outmatched and outgunned, had survived an engagement that should have annihilated them. The single torpedo hit on the Chikuma, a lucky shot in the chaos, was enough to make the Japanese withdraw, preventing further pursuit of the now scattered convoy, securing the delivery of critical supplies to the war effort. And here's the second plot twist. It would be years later, after the war had ended and the world began to pick through the wreckage of conflict, that declassified Japanese naval reports would shed astonishing light on the true impact of Mac's ingenuity. The reports from the Chikuma and her escorts spoke of an unforeseen atmospheric phenomenon, a dense, unnatural fog that had appeared suddenly, confounding their optical and radar systems alike. They had classified it as an anomalous weather event, possibly even a new, secret American weapon involving weather modification, completely throwing their tactical doctrine into disarray. They had no idea it was a deliberate man-made trick, designed and executed by a humble cook from Iowa, an observation of burned engine oil on a farm translated into a life-saving naval tactic. In the immediate aftermath, the USS Callahan returned to base. Her crew hailed for their exceptional skill and courage. The story of Macmillan's fog spread through the fleet, growing in the telling, though officially the engagement was attributed to skillful maneuvering and effective use of standard concealment tactics. Captain Vance, a man of tradition, couldn't publicly endorse the cook's trick as official doctrine, but in his private fitness report for Macmillan, he included a commendation for unusual ingenuity and resourcefulness under fire. Mac Macmillan, while not receiving a medal specifically for his smoke, was quietly transferred. His unique understanding of combustion, aerosols and atmospheric effects had been noted. He was assigned to a shore-based engineering unit, where his unconventional thinking could be channeled into designing and improving naval systems. His practical knowledge, born of everyday experience and keen observation, was finally recognized as a valuable asset, not just in the galley, but in the realm of naval engineering. The incident, though never officially documented as a separate tactical innovation, sparked subtle shifts in naval doctrine. Commanders began to consider new ways of employing smokescreens, exploring methods to increase their density, persistence, and radar-confounding properties. The event underscored a growing understanding of how environmental factors, whether natural or artificially induced, could drastically influence radar performance and overall tactical outcomes. It was a testament to the unpredictable nature of warfare, where the most unexpected source could yield the most profound results. After the war, Mac Macmillan, a quiet hero, returned to Iowa. He used his practical engineering skills and his newfound reputation for problem-solving to open a successful auto repair shop. He became a respected member of his community, forever carrying the quiet knowledge of the day he had, quite literally, blinded an enemy fleet with smoke. Commander Elias Vance went on to a distinguished career, often referring in later lectures to the importance of unconventional solutions and drawing lessons from unexpected sources. Vice Admiral Tetsuo Sato, deeply frustrated by the engagement that baffled his fleet, was eventually transferred to a less critical command, his career subtly tarnished by the unexplained phenomenon that had robbed him of a decisive victory. The story of the USS Callahan's encounter in the Philippine Sea, though perhaps not as famous as other major naval battles, became a minor legend within naval circles, a testament to how ingenuity and courage, even from the most unexpected sources, can turn the tide of battle. It underscores the profound human element in warfare, where a common sailor's keen observation and practical knowledge, born of everyday experience, could outwit advanced military technology and save hundreds of lives. If you found this story as astonishing as we did, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more untold tales from history. And before you go, tell us in the comments what other forgotten heroes or unexpected moments you'd like us to cover next. Your engagement helps us bring these incredible stories to life.